The question of whether you should buy, finance, or lease a car is surprisingly controversial, and I have had this exact argument with friends more times than I can count. On one side, people argue that buying a car outright is the best option because you get full ownership and it works out cheaper in the long run. On the other side, people swear by leasing because you pay far less each month, and you get to drive around a brand new car every few years. Both sides have valid points, but the truth is more nuanced. After doing a thorough analysis and running the numbers on all the available options, I was pretty surprised at what I found. The difference in savings between going for what a car dealership tries to sell you and what is actually the cheapest option is massive. So in this video, I am going to walk you through the four main ways to get a car, what each one actually costs with real numbers, and the psychological factors you need to consider before making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life. Let us start with part one, the main options. The first and most straightforward way to purchase a car is simply buying it outright. You pay the full price on day one, and you never have to worry about any payments or interest going forward. Pretty simple. The second way is through financing, which is essentially an auto loan. You put down a deposit, borrow the remaining amount at a set interest rate for an agreed period, let us say 3 to 5 years, and then you make monthly payments over that term. At the end of the period, you own the car. This option is very common because most people do not have $30,000 sitting in their bank account ready to drop on a car. The third way is leasing. Leasing is essentially like renting a car for a fixed period. You make monthly payments to use the car, and at the end of the contract, you give it back. The monthly payments here are calculated differently than with traditional financing. With an auto loan, you are paying off the full value of the car because you're going to own it at the end. With a lease, you are only repaying the portion of the car's value that it loses during the time you have it, which is called depreciation. That amount gets divided into monthly payments, plus some fees and interest on top. And the fourth option is what is sometimes called balloon financing, or a lease-to-own arrangement. This is one of the more popular options, and honestly, one of the most aggressively pushed by dealerships. Here is how it works. You agree on a term, you pay a deposit, and the dealership sets a guaranteed future value for the car at the end of the agreement, which is called the residual value. That residual value is subtracted from the purchase price to work out how much you need to finance and what your monthly payments will be. At the end of the contract, you have a few choices. You can decide to keep the car by paying that final balloon payment. You can return the car and walk away. Or you can use that value to trade the car in for a new one and start the cycle all over again. When I first learned about these options years ago, I had no idea there were this many variables. And I think that is true for most people. We walk into a dealership, the salesperson talks us through the options, and we pick the one with the lowest monthly payment without realizing what that choice actually costs us over time. Now let us move on to part two, which is the financial implications. To compare apples to apples, I ran the numbers on a typical mid-size family car, let us say a sedan or small SUV with a purchase price of around $30,000. I am using a 15% down payment, so $4,500, and a 3-year term across all options to make it as like for like as possible. For the auto loan option, I put down the deposit, and with an interest rate of just under 8% for someone with good credit, my monthly payments for a 3-year term would be approximately $760 a month. That means the total amount I pay for the car over 3 years comes to just over $31,000, including the interest. At that point, I own the car outright. Now, let us assume I want to sell it after those 3 years. Looking at comparable cars on the used market, I could realistically get around $16,000 for it. That means it would have effectively cost me about $15,000 to have the car for 3 years. Not bad, considering I owned it the entire time and could sell it whenever I wanted with no restrictions. For the lease option, assuming the same down payment, the monthly payments come out much lower at around $320 a month. The reason is simple. You are only paying for the car's depreciation during those 3 years, not the full value of the car. In this case, to have the car for 3 years, it would cost me approximately $15,500 in total. So the lease and the auto loan come out fairly close in total cost, which is interesting. But with the lease, you never own the car, you have mileage restrictions, and you have to keep the car in pristine condition or you get charged for it when you return it. So even though the numbers are similar, the flexibility is very different. Now let us talk about the balloon financing option, which is the one dealerships push the hardest. And there is a reason for that. It is the most lucrative for them. With the same down payment, the dealership sets a guaranteed future value for the car at the end of 3 years. Let us say $15,000. Based on that, my monthly payment would be around $410 a month. If at the end of the contract, I decide to return the car, the total cost to have it for 3 years would be approximately $19,300. That is almost $4,000 more than the lease or the auto loan over the same period. And if I decided to keep the car and pay that final balloon payment of $15,000, the total cost would be over $34,000, which is more than the car was worth brand new. So why do dealerships love this option so much? Because it encourages you to stay locked into their ecosystem. When the contract ends, they push you to trade it in for a new car and start the cycle again, meaning they keep making money from you indefinitely. They will also tweak the numbers using dealer contributions or adjusting the deposit to make it look more attractive on paper. And in some cases, it might genuinely work for you, especially if you get a car that holds its value really well or if you want the flexibility of having multiple options at the end. But you absolutely need to run the numbers looking at the total cost of the car as a whole, not just the monthly payment. That is the trap. Most people focus on the monthly figure and forget to add up what they actually end up paying. The other option is buying the car outright for $30,000. If I did that and sold it for $16,000 after 3 years, the cost to have the car would be $14,000, making this the cheapest option on paper. However, there is an important factor to consider here, and that is opportunity cost. If you put $30,000 into a car on day one, that money is locked up in a depreciating asset that is going down in value every single day. The alternative is putting down a smaller deposit, financing the rest, and investing the leftover money in something like an index fund or another income-generating asset. The question becomes, can you earn a better return on that invested cash than the additional cost of financing? If the stock market averages 8 to 10% a year over that period, and your auto loan interest rate is 8%, you could potentially come out ahead by financing and investing the difference. Let me give you a concrete example. If you put $4,500 down and finance the remaining $25,500 at 8%, your total interest paid over 3 years would be around $3,200. But if you took the cash you would have used to buy the car outright and invested $25,500 in an index fund averaging 8% a year, after 3 years, that investment would be worth around $32,000. That is a gain of about $6,500. And remember, you have paid about $3,200 in interest on the loan. So net, you could be about $3,000 better off by financing and investing the cash. But of course, that depends on the market performing well, which is never guaranteed. So there is a trade-off between the guaranteed saving of paying cash and the potential upside of investing. Now let us move on to part 3, the psychological factors. Because money is not just about math, it is also about how you feel and how you sleep at night. I have seen so many people make the mathematically optimal choice and then be miserable because they hate having a car payment every single month. If you are someone who tends to keep your cars for a long time, then buying through an auto loan or paying cash outright means you can pay the car off, own it, and then enjoy years of no car payments at all. That feeling of being done with payments is genuinely underrated. You also have full ownership, which means you can drive it as much as you want, make any modifications, and not worry about mileage limits or wear and tear charges. The downside is that any maintenance costs fall on you, and those tend to increase the longer you keep a car. Once the warranty expires, you are on the hook for everything. On the flip side, going for a lease or a balloon financing option means you can drive a newer car with lower monthly payments and you can change cars more regularly without worrying about selling the old one. You also avoid the headache of major maintenance because you are trading the car in before the warranty runs out, which is typically around the 3-year mark. But you do need to keep the car in pristine condition. Otherwise, you will get charged for any dings, scratches, or excessive wear when you return it. And there are restrictions on how many miles you can drive. If you go over that limit, you will incur an additional charge per mile, which can add up quickly if you have a long commute. If you have the money to buy a car outright, that is a solid option, especially if you hate the stress of monthly payments. But if you do go down that route, my strongest recommendation is to consider buying a pre-owned car that is 2 to 3 years old. Here is why. A new car loses about 20 to 30% of its value in the first year alone. By buying a car that is 2 to 3 years old, someone else has already taken that biggest depreciation hit. You get a car that is still relatively new, still reliable, and still has some warranty left, but you pay a fraction of the original price. Honestly, after running all these numbers and looking at this from every angle, buying a gently used car with cash or a small loan is probably the smartest option for most people. You skip the biggest depreciation hit, you avoid the complexity of leases and balloon payments, and you end up owning an asset that serves you well for years without a monthly payment hanging over your head. Running the numbers yourself is the only way to know which option is right for your specific situation, because it depends on your credit score, how long you plan to keep the car, how much you drive, and what you can afford each month. If you found this useful, subscribe. I post every week on money, investing, and building a financial life that is genuinely yours. I would also love to know how you bought your current car, or how you are thinking about purchasing your next one. I will see you in the next